Action RPG. When you hear this charming name, you immediately see dark catacombs vomited by damage. There, in the heart of colorful storm of greatness, is hardly to see the silhouette of a hero in which life was breathed in for one purpose: escapism. And to this day, it is impossible to escape from reality in a better way. You are deaf because all sounds are the thunder of your victory. You are blind because you see only the ringing fury. Your hands are trembling because their trembling makes the hero dance macabre. You are not here, and you wouldn't want to come back, because here it's a fucking senseless masturbation, often with cheesy graphics and an extremely stupid goal to make virtual numbers bigger. If someone decides to be inspired by it, what can such an unimpressive thing turn into? Only into an even more bland one, because it won't be even new to you. Not until they add a soul's approach to it, take away the pointless crowds of enemies, add something about skill, turn the world from a god to a maze of mysteries, and make it great looking spectacle. However, borrowing is not always the solution. Sometimes because of it you get, let's say, palword, which looks bad, smells the same, but a lot of millions copies was sold. What we start to know after this, that both PC Master Race and console people are not special, and are not much different from the mobile game enjoyers. Imagine that you were given everything you love in one dish, and there is even something that were previously unavailable to you. And here is the hype that is not only make you buy palword for 15 bucks, but even sell to those who are not interested in the lazy mechanics and horseballs Rockstar games. And overall, the elite of gaming introduced it to mobile game building approach. But in the case of the No Rest for the Wicked, which is also inspired by different things from different areas, in the first place it's interesting RPG from a very talented developers, and after this it turns into an action RPG. The first thing that will meet us is a world in which you do not need to immediately rush to the end of the location in order to quickly leveling up by sowing death. For action RPG, illegal things. Because the goal is to find someone stronger, chew on his ass, and immediately start sorting out dropped junk. Here, the number of enemies is significantly reduced, but at the same time each one has its own moveset and variety of attacks, forcing, as in Dark Souls, take care of your ass because it hurts. And as in Dark Souls, the road of adventure is never straight. There are plenty of hidden locations, shortcuts, loot, and everything else not just scattered on the floor, but carefully, manually, left on the territory, sprawling not only in the sides, but also up and down. If it seems that it's possible to climb somewhere, and what is no less important, to fall, you can climb or even fall there. Because you can't just take and do something Souls-like without possibility roll into the fucking abyss. And plus, what seems very unimportant, but at the same time give completely different level of immersion, markers, or either their absence. The designer's verified path will drag you into the jaws of bone-grinding adventures. However, important action elements are not missing either. Loot here is not just loot. It's the basis of character development, because there are no monstrous build creation trees that condemn the player to act in a strictly certain way for individual characters. Everything depends on weapon and equip. So the point on what? The weapons itself is divided into several types: white, blue, cursed and unique. White weapons are the most customizable because of the large numbers of free slots for runes. Blue already comes with the enchantment and fewer slots. Cursed weapon have bonuses too, but it's bigger and it have debuffs. And unique stuff is something rare created specially by the developers because of what the finding of it is associated with the history and progression in the world. All of them except the typical movesets for different types of weapon have special attacks. This means that the usual skills are determined by what runes shoved into weapons in those rune slots, which can still be pulled out and shoved in. And this has allowed you, in idea, sharpened these weapons to your favorite style of combat, while rare weapons have fewer slots and forced you to adjust to them. And it's with taking into account that enchantments also seem to be able to add in view of the presence of something empty. You can wear anything, but everything is limited by the maximum allowable weight of equipment. And this affects the way you move, which is no less powerful than weapons, will affect the chosen style of combat. If you are light, rushes will be available to you, which allowing you, among other things, quickly get behind the back of enemy and execute them. If the weight is medium, you can roll around, and if it's heavy, judging by the movements of some enemies, you can knock the enemies off their feet. But for what after all this we need characteristics, you may ask? From the usual stats such as strength, dexterity and other depends scaling weapons damage, and they can be scaled from 1, 2 or maybe even more characteristics. At the same time, in addition to them, there is at least a focus, responsible for energy that spends on skills, plus there is a separate characteristic responsible for the weight of equipment that allows you to increase the maximum weight limit of gear in order to leave yourself the ability to canonically roll. Points for all this we get obviously by increasing levels, but what is still not clear is how strictly limited the build will be, and could we pull the runes from staff with magical attacks and stick them in swords, and will it change what stats will multiply damage of weapons? However, once you've got your shoes on and dressed up, the only thing left to do is chew someone face off. And here it's back to Souls-like games, but without the camera created in the pit of hell to torture victims and with sane hitboxes that, according to the developers' assurances, measure it to the pixels. Kind of unimportant for someone, but it's very important, because if you never dodged a boss last hit to a moveset, sweated on it for an hours, and delivered the final blow at that moment, you haven't fucking lived. Boy, it just... Anyway, apart from rolls, pulls and stomps, there is the ability to block blows and also to parry them. How canonical will be parrying and how many hundreds of hits will need to reflect by face is not yet clear. And additionally, given that we have already been shown an enemy who puts curses on us after hits, apparently we will need to not just go through turning meeting into minesmith, but perhaps we even have to dress up and smeared with different in order to minimize the negative effects not only from enemies, but perhaps even from the biomes. Because if you have played something Souls-like, and did it not become covered in cold sweat or swearing hysterics when seeing any swamp, then you have not played Souls-like games. You're just pussy. Toxic swamps are as canonical as campfires. Plus, there are even oils for waxing swords and other weapons, so I think some game zones, as well as bosses or enemies, will have significant weaknesses to some types of damage, or they will be rewarded us with debuffs when we go there. But where to get it all, you may ask, yeah? And it's not about equipment that falls from chest and dead person, but rather about consumables of various sorts. So far it's still not clear do we will have Estus or Tears be healed in battle in general with simple food. But in any case, as it's supposed to be again in Souls-like games, we have a hub with various traders and other NPCs. Someone will now think about Elden Ring, someone will remember Dark Souls, but in view of the fact that this hub will be offered to develop and improve, it better remember the Bastion. After collecting resources in the world, we can spend them on improvements of the town, and by this way discovering new goods, opportunities for processing resource or getting increased bonuses from sleeping in the tavern and other similar things, or you can spend them directly on crafting. So far there are 4 options with the creations of weapons and armor, decorations, machines and furniture. And at the same time, to create anything, you need to have blueprints and resources themselves, some of which can be processed for hours. Yes, friends, we have finally reached the action RPG shit. Some resources can be used without processing, but given the separate tab for benches, many of them will be processed before we can use them, and it can take hours. And given the possibility to return back to past zones for farming, they will be in short supply. So, allow me to please all who waited, welcome, this is a grind. How painful it will be is not clear, but the system of crafting please me very much, cause in my soul I am a fucking dwarf. And I don't talk about reforging fusion and other things associated with just the characteristics rolls of the loot. I talk about this one, about the creation of something specific. It's hard to explain, it's like runs in Vindictus in the previous version, not this new one, I do not yet know how things are there. Anyway, runs for the sake of farming resources for armor sets. There could be loot, but this farming of resources and then ability to create from them armor greatly added value to even the most miserable item, so I think this is very important. In any case, up to this point, the whole game for you can pass in the mode of a fascinatingly grim RPG with unique and exciting combat. And with the endgame, it turns into a well-designed action RPG made with love for casuals, who are ready to sweat in the dark dungeons but do not want to do it in the world where the fucking hero is not visible and the gameplay turns into mindless running with the sounds of splashing damage. You know? Just Dudes, you finally can love the hero, which can be sharpened for any desired gameplay, rather than breed entities with unoriginal builds characterized by damage numbers. Anyways, the endgame is a typical dungeons decorated with the verticality, which is not typical, but anyway, with a different set of monsters, where we go in the name of profit and glory, and resources. With multiplayer, it will be even better, and it will be added later, and for those who are interested in killing people, there will be arenas, but about it closer to release after the start of early access. So far, it is tied in the roadmap. So now you have the question, is it necessary to run and get it? I hope you have this question, but anyway, it's not the fact. There are concerns in general, but all of them are more related to endgame. And despite the fact that the name of the company is pretty known, now they want to make a game that will be generally endless. And they had never done it before. In view of what, with the part that goes before the moment when the typical for action RPG part appears, everything kinda looks great. But what will be with it near to end, and how much it will be interesting, it will be possible to find out after the release. And remembering that after cleaning locations at first time, it's available to farm them, it may not turn out very well if you suddenly decide to return to the locations that have already passed. They will be filled with the new enemies, and it's not about how to just restore all those who were killed before you sat down to the fire. The whole entire location is filled with a new type of enemies. So it's forming new goals and filling with new loot. Locations themselves, as far as I understand, will not change, or perhaps some individual places can be filled by biome features. But they still will be the same places where you already been. All my point is that the game is entirely created by hand, which significantly limits the options of randomization. So it can be very good if we talk about like not very long RPG, but it can be very sad if we talk about endless fucking game. And it's not me who talk about endless experience of this game. This is about what developers talk. All in all, everything is good, but it may turn out to be a game where we will be severely limited to either levels or type of gear levels, forcing us to spend hours on grind, which kills all interest after 5 hours of play. And developers want to make this game is very long playing. What they about battle passes and other things is not clear, but you kind of understand, yeah? Hundreds of service games can fail without bringing any penny, but they will not stop making them. At the same time, I think it's still worth to recommend it for the sake of one playthrough, or not one, to learn the dark history of the corrupted world in Souls-like hacks and with monstrously beautiful implementation. And for now, I just kiss your face, slap your ass, and bye.